All right, welcome to Good Morning Kenya. For just joining us, my name is Jane Maboy. We are glad you are on board. Now we want to get started with the discussions for the day, and this one is all about helping you better understand, what we mean when we talk about an audit report that has been put out in regards to the counties. After every financial year, there is an audit that is put out within 6 months. But what do we really mean when you talk about an audit? You as a common Mwananchi, is it a term that you actually understand? Is it a process that you understand? Is it a process that you are part of? That is a discussion that we are about to have in regards to a launch that will be happening this Friday on the 26th, which is the Citizen Accountability Audit, which is an initiative of the Office of the Auditor General in regards to engaging the public more when it comes to this auditing process. But before we get to let you know what this launch and engagement is all about, let me introduce you to my guest here with me in studio, who will be helping us with this discussion. I'll start with the extreme left. We have Chrispin Oduor, who is a consultant working with the World Bank in regards to citizen engagement. Karibu sana, Chrispin.
Thanks, Jane.
All right. At the center, we have Mr. Samuel Kimeu, who is the Executive Director at Transparency International. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
And to my immediate left, we have David Gichana, who is the Deputy Auditor General. Karibu sana.
Asanteni.
All right, so as always, any questions, comments, or clarifications that you may be needing, please feel free to send them through. Our SMS line is on the top left of your screen. 20154 is the number. Do leave a name and location. You can also go on to Twitter. Our hashtag is #GoodMorningKenya. My handle is @JaneMamboy, and our official station handle is @KBC Television on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So this is basically Audit Class 101. If you need to take a pen and a notebook, please feel free to do so, and so that you can be better positioned to understand what we mean when we talk about an audit. And let me just start with you, David. Just as I was saying, when we talk about an audit, maybe somebody out there doesn't really understand what it means, and maybe we can just hear from you as the Auditor General. When we talk about an audit in regards to public entities, government institutions, what do we really mean?
Thank you so much, Shane. When we talk about an audit, this is a very basic process that actually happens every day. And as far as I can remember, in human history, audit is actually one of the first activities. Because every time you do an activity and you go back to review, to examine, to try to find out whether you have done is what was expected of you, you are here doing an audit. The only thing that doesn't happen in normal daily life is that you don't document the results of your evaluation or your review. In the purpose of the Auditor General, he is required by the law to review, to examine public expenditure, public revenues, and report every year to the relevant authorities. In this particular case, the National Assembly or the Senate or the county assemblies.
Okay.
So basically that is what an audit is. A review is an examination of the activities that have been programmed to be carried out.
All right. Now let me just hear from you, Samuel. When we talk about an audit, do you feel like up to where we stand, we have been involving the public as much as we are supposed to in regards to our authorities and the relevant office? Have the public been involved in the process up until now when we're having this citizen accountability participation aspect being put into place?
Not quite. I think the traditional audit has been carried by the Auditor General under the Constitution, which provides that once the reports are concluded, they are presented to Parliament, and then Parliament deals with them accordingly. But that said, civil society organizations have created social audit tools, social accountability tools that include tools that would be complementary to the work that the Auditor General does. So I think what we are looking at now is a deliberate attempt by the Auditor General to reach out to civil society and therefore the public to help in the audit process.
Yes.
And I think it makes sense if you look at it from the perspective that there are a lot of projects that happen in the local areas where people are and have a direct interest, can actually see what is happening and can give information about certain aspects of those projects. Yeah.
And you know, the public is the biggest actually resource when it comes to wanting to know this, the nitty-gritties of any project that happened down at the counties. Now, Chrispin, when we talk about, you know, citizen participation and when the whole aspect of awareness, where do you think we stand in terms of audit in itself?
First of all, looking at awareness, I can say that there's not much awareness, especially at the local level by citizens, on areas where they would be able actually to participate in the audit process. As Mr. Kimeu has said, we have initiatives that have been put in place by civil society organizations and organized groups, for instance, the Bunge la Mwananchi, through which they are actually able to demand accountability from the government officers, who we refer to as duty bearers, on how they're managing resources and actually implementing service delivery. So a lot still needs to be done in terms of educating the public on the provisions in the Constitution and the various legislation on devolution and even on public finance, on how they can engage effectively in the audit process.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about an audit, you know, we usually get to hear some terminologies that are commonly used after an audit has been done. These terminologies are used to just try and describe and say, you know, this is what this county got, this is what this was issued to this county. And maybe you could even just help our viewers better understand what some of these terminologies even mean in the first place. Let's start with an unqualified opinion. What does that mean in regards to when a report is put out?
Thank you, Chen. As I've just said, an audit is to examine or review, and if you want to put in the simplest terms, basically an audit is to hear and to see. You hear what has happened, and you see what has actually happened.
All right.
And so when we say an entity has an unqualified report, we are simply saying that this entity has been evaluated, you have been able to see what they had planned to do, you have been able to hear their comments on the issues that on any challenges they may have had during the process of their implementation of their plans. And so you are satisfied that they have met the minimum requirements for achieving their objectives.
That is the unqualified
That is the
opinion.
unqualified. In other words, you can say that's a clean report. It's a clean report.
Okay.
But that does not mean that they are absolutely clean. That is important to emphasize, that even when you have an unqualified report, there may be one or two issues that you are dealing with, but those issues are not material enough to say that you are not clean. You have achieved your objectives to a good extent as per the requirements, including the auditing standards, because the standards have benchmarks on where you should be for you to be able to be said you have a clean report.
All right.
Thank you.
So that is the unqualified opinion.
Yes.
What about the qualified opinion?
Qualified opinion, it says that you may have prepared your financial statements, which is the reflection of what you are expected to do, but you have a number of issues that have not been sorted out.
Discrepancies here and there.
Yes, and when you have qualified, you will either have an except for or an adverse opinion.
Okay.
That is a qualified opinion. So, and I will explain the two so that I can be able to clear the difference.
Yeah.
When it's a qualified, which is an except for, it means you have done everything as expected, except for one or two issues.
Literally.
That makes a difference. But when you have an adverse opinion, which is the other part of qualified, it means that between what you expected to do and what you have done, there are material differences. There are material differences that have come up, which makes the auditor give you the opinion, adverse opinion.
All right.
There are significant issues, and they have been tabulated in your report to show what those material differences are. There are disagreements. One, your financials may not have balanced.
Okay.
Two, even if they have balanced, they will be having fundamental things that are in there that are not acceptable as per what you are expected to do. And I can give you an example. For example, if you have a fixed assets and you are supposed to say fixed assets a cost of 1 million, but in your books you have said you have fixed assets of 1 million, but you have not provided for depreciation, which is the wear and tear, which is the use of the assets. And the standard is required that if you have fixed assets and you are using a particular framework of accounting, then you should provide for it. If you have not, that becomes a problem.
Okay.
That will lead you to an adverse,
opinion. All right.
Because it's something that is fundamental, you know it, it's expected, but you have not been able to do it.
All right.
Yes.
So underqualified there are two, except for and adverse opinion.
Thank you.
And now the other one we get to hear about is the disclaimer of opinion.
Disclaimer of opinion really is not an opinion. And I think I need to make this very clear.
Yes, please.
In disclaimer of opinion, the auditor is simply saying that he is not able to make an opinion on the financial statements presented. Reason being, they have not met the minimum requirements. You have not provided information that is required for an audit opinion to be made. And so he's saying, I am not able to make an opinion. And so far, I disclaim.
As a whole?
As a whole.
Okay.
It means that in some instances, you may actually have no financial statements. You may have pieces of paper here and there, but that does not make up what is required as a set of financial statements. And in simple terms, when you have a disclaimer, it means the auditor has what is called limited scope. He is not able to audit because he's not given the information that is required.
All right. There are no supporting documents as a whole. All right, so the next time you hear some of these terminologies, I hope you are better positioned to understand what they mean. Now, when we talk about, an audit being done, especially when, government entities are involved, does the auditor's scope of work spill over to organizations that, receive funds from government entities?
The mandate of the Office of the Auditor General is very clear on Article 229 of the Constitution, which clearly spells out that the Auditor General is obligated constitutionally to audit all public entities which receive resources from the public.
All right.
And so if there are transfers from the government, unless there are donations to third parties, entities which are not government, all those government entities are audited, starting from the central government, which is the national government, the county governments, the state corporations that are in there, the semi-autonomous government agencies that are in there, other agencies of government that receive appropriations from the government in whatever form, they are also audited.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Chrispin. When we talk about citizen participation, and this in light with to this launch that is about to happen on Friday, do you think it's a bit too late for us to even have this engagement in regards to bearing in mind what we have been seeing in the past?
Better late than never, I should say. And first of all, I'd like to go back to what Mr. Gichana has just mentioned, and especially talking on the disclaimer. I think this is an area that should really be of interest to citizens, because public officers are supposed to actually work within certain frameworks, and it doesn't really add up when they are not able, for instance, to provide financial reports and documents. Remember that the resources that government actually uses, most of it comes from the public in terms of the taxes that we pay. And if it's loans, then the public also are part of the stakeholders who contribute towards paying for these particular resources. So it will then be very, very important that the public gets much more interested in some of these opinions that are coming out of the reports that are being developed by the Auditor General, by then holding the different government officers who are supposed to be providing this information accountable, by telling us why aren't they able to provide this information. Is it that resources are being lost and we are just sitting on this particular information that is very, very critical and important for us to actually track government expenditure if we are going to realize some of the development objectives that we have as a country. So for citizens then, it's incumbent, and other stakeholders included, like the civil society organizations, to take it up and begin questioning some of the issues that are coming out of these particular reports. So we have to start from somewhere. It's not late.
Better late than never.
Yes, better late than
All right,
never.
now let me come to you, Kimeu. Now, when we talk about the citizen participation, citizen accountability engagement framework, from where you sit, maybe what necessitated having such an engagement in place to even aside from involving and educating the public about, the whole audit process, what are some of the ideas that necessitated the need of this engagement in the first place?
Well, I think for us as civil society who work on issues of accountability, we recognize the role that the citizens play and can potentially play.
Yeah.
But we also recognize the gaps that exist in terms of information, in terms of, you know, the complexity of the laws and also the reports that are produced. And I think many of us have been trying to bridge that gap by, you know, educating members of the public on what the requirements are and mobilizing members of the public to be involved in, you know, in these forms of audit. And for a social audit, for example, to be properly done, you need information about a project, what standards are required, and you need people to go into a facility, for example, and to give you information about what they see.
Yeah.
And what they are told about about that facility, and to be able to document it. And when they document it, then they can use that information to seek for interventions from duty bearers, county governments, you know, government agencies on the failures that they see. So it's a system that is essentially aimed at improving primarily service delivery to make sure that, you know, public services or projects are implemented according to the legal stipulations and that the public benefits or derives the benefits that were intended to be derived from that project.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming quickly into the framework that we are discussing about today, I think it's the first time that the Auditor General is going out to work with civil society in this. And I think many of us in civil society also haven't worked in the manner in which we are proposing to be able to do this. And I think for us to, you know, it's important for us to anticipate the challenges that we might encounter and also to find ways of dealing with those challenges. So our framework really just stipulates what is going to be done, what are the principles that are going to guide that engagement, what are the mitigating measures of the risks that actually do come along, because you know, you have a relationship and different ways of working. The Auditor General, he is very methodical and of course operates within a legal setup. The civil society doesn't necessarily have this, the boundaries that the Auditor General has. So you want to have a relationship that is mutually beneficial and reinforcing without undermining each other's work.
All right.
Yeah.
And before I actually get to the nitty-gritties of, you know, the engagement framework, let me just come to you, David. You know, when we talk about social responsibility, you know, all the relevant stakeholders come into play. But for the benefit of our viewer, the common Wanjiko, why is it important that they actually take time and be part of this process?
Thank you. That's an important question you ask, Jane. And in light of the public audit process, first and foremost, we need to simplify and demystify the audit process so that citizens are able to see the value and benefit of this institution, which is a supreme audit institution in the country that works for them. That entails that we engage them so that they are able to understand what is it that we do, how do we do it, and how does it benefit them.
Yeah.
One of the things that is important also is to know that the audit reports are out there, but the question is how many Kenyans access the report and have time to read those reports. This is one of the things that we want to achieve through engaging citizens in this process, because then it will make a difference for them to ensure that these reports that are out there, they are able to see how the projects around their own wards, around their own villages, are impacted by what they see every day.
Okay.
And so it's going to be a very involving process, very educating process, but also very empowering process. Because at the end of the day, the question that the Auditor General is trying to sort out is how do we ensure that all of us work together to ensure public resources are not at risk of wastage, misappropriation, or misuse.
Okay.
That requires that the citizen is at the center of it. And this is an engagement framework that we have come up with by mutually discussing with the civil society organization and citizens in various forums is a culmination of that process to ensure that they know their obligations, the office knows our obligations, but we partner together to ensure that we plan, we execute, we report, we follow up on the audit process, and we ensure that Kenyan taxpayers' resources are used optimally.
And then they can
For their
actually
benefit.
see the benefits.
For their
Let me also hear from you, Kimeu, when we talk about the importance, especially from where you sit, as Transparency International, the importance of such processes and social responsibility, especially on the end of the citizen. What do you feel, what are some of the ideas that you have in regards to the importance of this whole aspect from the citizen's point of view?
Well, every cent that is spent by a government agency is public money. It is money that is derived from our taxes as pay as you earn, or taxes when you buy goods or services. Government has no money of its own. So whatever government spends, the billions you hear being mentioned around, is actually your money. This morning when you bought a packet of milk, you contributed to that kitty. When you buy a bread or fueled your car or paid fare in your matatu, you've contributed to that kitty. Our constitution in 2010, placed the citizen at the center of governance. The time when we used to say that government will bring development to the people is long gone. What the constitution envisages is an engaged citizenry, a citizen that is working with the public agencies to co-create this country. And therefore, there is a basic assumption that citizens will be interested in what government does and how resources that are spent are spent. Because it impacts us directly when we don't spend resources properly, when we steal those resources, when we misapply them. The impact is very direct. You have a hospital or a dispensary, it's been constructed, it has no equipment or it's poorly done, you don't get to be treated in that dispensary. You have a bridge that is poorly constructed, it collapses, it inhibits your movement around. So I think it's a very critical role that the citizen has in this country, and what we are seeking to do is to sharpen that engagement and make sure that as many people as possible play their role. Actually, my own view is that there is a civic duty to be engaged in what is happening in government. And what we do now is to create the awareness and facilitation that enables every citizen to potentially play their civic role in holding government accountable. Yeah.
Because we always complain of inflation, prices going up, everything is going up, but we don't take time to actually see what goes into these processes. And Chrispin, I also like to just pose the same question to you, the importance of this whole engagement, especially from where you sit, citizen engagement from a World Bank perspective. And not just for Kenya, but even for any other country out there for that matter.
Yes. Citizens who are actually the end beneficiaries of, for instance, services that are actually being delivered by government at either the national or the county level, do face some challenges at times. For instance, let's speak, for instance, the health sector. There are some instances out of experience and work that I've engaged in before, whereby, for instance, a citizen would tell you that he went to a health facility, he was told to buy the medication, bought the medication, came back to the health facility for an injection, but they were not able to get the injection simply because the frontline service provider demanded for some bribe to do that. Now, that kind of information ordinarily is not likely to get to, for instance, if it's in a county, the CEC for health. Whereas the government has budgeted resources for delivery of services in the health sector. These services in that particular instance are not being delivered. What that means at the end of the day is that the health indicators are not improving. And the executive at the top level keeps on wondering, why is it that you're pumping a lot of money into the health sector, but
Not seeing the end result.
We are not seeing results out of this.
Yeah.
Now, how then do we ensure that that kind of information gets to the policymaker at that particular level? We can only get that through citizen engagement. And that's why this engagement framework is very, very important. For instance, for the Office of the Auditor General, which is supposed to ensure that resources are being applied lawfully and effectively, such information from the citizen would be very, very critical to help them actually report comfortably that the resources that were utilized were actually used effectively. Another example I would like to give is a situation whereby I visited some health facilities somewhere deep down in Kachiliba in West Pokot. And the citizen was saying that this project had been developed through public resources, but for almost 6 years, the facility is lying idle. Now, for the Office of the Auditor General, having done the audits, they might have found out, for instance, that the resources were actually utilized well, the procurement process was clean.
And the supporting documents.
The supporting documents are actually available.
Yeah.
So they'll give their opinion. But then, are the citizen assessing the services? So we need to provide that avenue whereby the citizen is actually able to provide this feedback to the policymakers that, yes, you constructed a health facility, but we are not assessing services.
So it's not just about having that facility, it's about how accessible is it, how practical is it benefiting the Mwananchi?
Yes.
And you can only get that information from you as the end beneficiary, the consumer of all these, services and all these services that are meant to help you as a whole. So now let's get into this, citizen engagement framework. And let me hear from you, Kimeu, when you talk about this engagement, what are some of the guiding principles that and values that are guiding this engagement as a whole?
Well, I think this is a partnership, so the collaboration and working together is at the center of it. Then there is the question of openness and transparency,
Okay.
and also, access to information. We have to provide information for everybody in this process to be able to play their role.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to be, how would I say, we have to be, we complement each other, so to speak. So I think there's a sense in which we have to recognize the boundaries of what each one of us is able to do, and place that at the disposal of everyone who is participating in this.
All right.
And I think the way this is structured is that you would create a framework that is able to reach every corner of this country, potentially, through working with, civil society organizations at the national level, but also at the local level.
Okay.
And then harnessing that information and creating a feedback loop that allows everyone who is involved to be engaged.
And inject whatever they're able to.
Yeah.
Let me come to you, David. He's just mentioned the whole aspect of partnerships, and there are so many different stakeholders that come into play when it comes to citizen engagement. And maybe you could tell us a bit about some of the relevant stakeholders that you're hoping to reach out to, in as much as the end person that you're looking to really bring on board is the citizen. Which are the other relevant stakeholders that come into play in regards to citizen engagement?
It's important that there are a number of partners that we are going to work with in this kind of a framework that we have developed. First and foremost, as we have said, is a system at the center, but through their organized forms, which is the civil society organizations, and here we'll be dealing with, for example, the youth. There are youth-specific issues that we need to deal with, and therefore the youth organizations will become very critical in terms of setting this engagement forward. The other group of partners that we are also looking for is professional organizations. There are professional organizations, for example, when you talk about engineers, they have a lot of information. They will be able to share with us a lot of information on buildings or roads, road network, environmental experts. They will be able to tell us information about this area through this framework, and that will be very useful to us. Academia will also be useful because some of the researches that are going on which can help us be able to improve what we are doing in terms of our actual work and also translate the kind of work that we have already done into informing policy for future depends on academia. And therefore, the link that we have with academia will be very useful in terms of this process. You also appreciate that this process will be able to work effectively out there with the help of development partners.
Yes.
In a way, you will find that we'll have a link to them, because some of these social auditors will need to be capacity built to be able to tool them to understand how they need to access the information that is already available, which they need for them to evaluate the projects that are around their villages.
Yes.
And therefore, this requires the support of our development partners across. So there are a number of partners. Government agencies, which deal with different things, will also find themselves looping into this citizen engagement framework, because they will be doing their work, but while they are doing their work, they are actually complementing what we are doing, just as same as we complement what they are doing. And therefore, we'll find that there are areas of convergence out there.
Okay.
There are community-driven projects which are in the villages out there. The agriculture experts will be involved in those projects. The water experts will be involved, but at the same time, we need to review them. We need to examine them, and therefore we'll be able to converge with all these partners as we carry out the implementation of this citizen engagement framework.
All right, so this is just the beginning.
This is
to
just the
set the
beginning.
pace.
Yes.
All right, let me come to you, Chrispin. You know, Kimeu had mentioned that there are some foreseeable challenges that are expected, and maybe you could tell us a bit about that, because you know not everything goes smoothly, in as much as we hope to get the best out of it. What are some of the foreseeable challenges that you know you have seen coming, and how are we even planning to counter them and handle them?
The first thing we need to actually understand is that, and actually appreciate, is that we are dealing with a number of stakeholders who have interests, who wield power, and who also have incentives. It's a fact that the work of the Office of the Auditor General is actually very sensitive work. And when you're talking about social accountability and social audit, it's actually about the public officers explaining their actions or inactions. And under normal circumstances, we get very comfortable at whatever level when someone is demanding from you to explain, for instance, your action when you have cases of mismanagement of resources or even poor service delivery. So one of the challenges that we actually foresee is, for instance, politicization of the entire process.
Yeah.
So how then do we handle that, given the sensitive nature of the work of the Office of the Auditor General and the sensitive nature of citizen accountability audit? What then we have in place is to ensure that, for instance, there is objectivity by the stakeholders who are engaged in the audit, that is the citizens, and that we also have close partnership with the stakeholders in government who we are actually, for instance, auditing through the social audit process. Once you build that relationship with these stakeholders, then there's transparency in the way you go through the social audit process, for instance. They are part and parcel of it. There is the issue of validations of the findings of the social audit reports, so that at the end of the day, the document that we have and the findings that are put out there are actually factual. The other challenge would be the issue of objectivity on the part of the citizen. One way we are actually handling this is to have a rigorous process of identifying, for instance, the civil society organizations that are actually engaged in the process by the Office of the Auditor General. And just to go back, the civil society organizations engaged in the process are simply proxies to engaging the citizens.
The citizen, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what we'd want is a situation whereby citizens are also able to take up this role on their own at the local level to demand accountability, for instance, even from the local leaders, whether it's the member of the county assembly, whether it's the executive, whether it's the service provider at that particular level, on how they're delivering services and how they're actually managing the resources that they've been entrusted with.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And also, Kimeu, your thoughts as well in regards to some of the challenges and also the vetting process just as he's bringing in.
I think the challenge of bringing different stakeholders who have different approaches to the way they do things. Can manifest itself in a number of ways. It could mean that some people are not don't feel comfortable confined just by the rules that have been set. And yet there has to be discipline and objectivity in the manner in which this is done. Also, I think for this to be a meaningful process, each player there has to be a loop that is closed so that information flows and everybody really plays their bit, plays their role. So that's something else that we see could potentially become a challenge. Okay. Sustaining also the interest of the players to play this role in the long term. I think the other challenge really would be a question of resources. That remains a challenge even for the Auditor General as we speak. And I think for citizens, even though in the bigger scheme of things, it should cost much less to do citizen audits. But certainly there will be need for resources to make sure that some of these activities are undertaken.
And move on smoothly.
Yeah, and also particularly if you go beyond just the audit into, actioning the recommendations that come up.
The implementation process,
yes, yeah.
All right. Now, David, just looking at this initiative, which came from the Office of the Auditor General, is it something that is for the long term? How sustainable is it in terms of making sure that at the end of every financial year, the citizen can be sure that this engagement will be happening on a national scale, as opposed to it being just, it's happening right now, but next year we might not hear of it?
Thank you very much. That's important. This framework that we have developed with the consultations, with wide consultations between ourselves and the citizens, is here to stay.
Okay.
That's how I see the future of this process. As my colleagues have said, ultimately, it is a system who is going to take over this role to ensure that at every time a project is starting in your village, you are able to see this is what we needed, it is in the plans, this is how much has been budgeted for this project, this is what the contractor is doing, and this, at the end of the day, if it's a borehole, we have received the water and we are enjoying clean water, which will also contribute towards the sustainable development goals. So I see this process as a process that is going to be long term. What we are trying to do at the moment is to ensure that we have a framework that puts our common agenda together and sets the way forward to ensure that we even harness leveraging on technology to ensure that every person is involved in this process from every corner of the country to ensure that we are not leaving anybody behind in this process. And therefore, the impacts of the use of public resources will be better monitored and better evaluated and better results achieved with this process. And therefore, once it takes off, it will be here for a very long time.
Right.
The other point that is important for me also to mention, when you check across the globe, audits are moving away from just financial audits, because with systems, with well-developed systems, the accuracy of financial statements is no longer being an issue. It's only a challenge for Africa and in a country, for example, where our systems are yet to be very
as efficient
as the other parts of the world. And so people are moving towards evaluating the impacts or the outcomes of the use of resources.
Okay.
That is best achieved through this process of involving the beneficiaries, the users, because we want to find out where does the ceiling fall, what impact has that ceiling created at that point. The only way you can get proper interpretation and proper information about it is ask the person who is there. And if that person is working with you, then you are in a better position to say, this is what we are doing at this point, this is the results, how do we improve it? How do we mitigate some of the challenges that are there? And therefore, this is going to be a long-term process, and it requires every one of us to be involved, and it's of very vital importance to all our citizens.
And is it going to be taken down to the counties as opposed to being centralized and happening just once a year post the financial year? Now that's when it's going to be happening. Is it going to be taken down to the counties such that the common mwananchi can see a project and they can be able to, they can know where they can go to report and say, this was supposed to have been done, but it hasn't been done, or I'm not accessing any of the services that I should have been accessing from this place?
The framework allows us to deal with central government or national government sectors and activities, as well as the county's activities.
Okay.
Why? Because you are not going to move from where you live or you operate from to go and do an audit in another place, as opposed to what the officers of the Auditor General's office do, from moving from one localized area to other areas.
Okay.
We will want citizens to report on projects within their own villages. And so as you walk up, you are going to your farm, you will pass through a school being constructed.
Okay.
And you're able to see the materials that have been delivered are substandard.
So this is an engagement.
And at that point,
yeah,
you have a way of reporting this.
Yeah.
And when you report it, it's evaluated, it's documented, and the duty bearers are asked, what can we do to change this situation?
So just as you
opposed
said,
to
yeah,
coming after the building is up or is falling down and asking, why is it cracking? Because the materials that were meant to be used were not used at the right time.
All right.
This is going to be a continuous process.
Okay.
It's not a one-off, which is like what the Constitution requires, that the Auditor General provides at least one report every year. This is going to be a continuous process with the involvement of people anytime. It's actually going to contribute towards real-time audits,
All right.
which is at the side of Kenyans and at the side of people all across the world.
so in as much as this launch is happening this Friday, it's now going to be taken down to the counties.
It is going to go down to the counties,
Yeah.
to the ward level, and if possible, to the village
All right.
elders.
So this accountability framework will be coming down to the counties just to come closer to you, because we can't be having you coming to a centralized place to report issues that are happening back at home. All right. Now let's just quickly let me come to you, Chrispin, and let's get to the process in itself. What is going to be happening? Just a brief overview on the process that will be happening in this engagement process.
First of all, in any social accountability work, for instance, social audit, we usually have the identification of what we want to audit.
Okay.
And the kind of framework that we've actually developed places some huge mandate on the role of the Office of the Auditor General in terms of driving the entire process at this particular moment. So the office then working together with stakeholders who include, for instance, the civil society organizations, who I said again are simply proxies to engaging the citizen. I engage in a process of identifying then which projects do you want to social audit at any given time. So once this has been done, the Office of the Auditor General then, through the rigorous process of identifying the civil society organization to engage with at the local level, because remember that the projects are scattered all over the country and you're talking about inclusivity. It could, for instance, be a project that's funded by CDF. It could be a county-funded project. So once the Office of the Auditor General then identifies the CSO to engage with, they get into an agreement. This is an engagement agreement whereby the organization in question and the Office of the Auditor General actually sign into this particular agreement. And that is very, very important given the fact that we have to actually abide by the principles and the values that we have in this particular framework.
Yeah.
So there has to be that agreement. So once that is done, then it's usually very important to train the social auditors. So this will then be undertaken so that they actually get to know what we are going to audit, why we are actually doing the audit, what are the objectives of the audit. Once that is done, then there is usually the visit to the auditee, as they call them. And here it's very, very critical to do this because you just don't walk in to begin auditing without laying the ground for the work and even the auditee understanding why you are actually undertaking this. And this also makes it very easy for you then to engage around this particular process with the auditee. For instance, they now understand why they even have to share with you the information that is very, very important for the social audit. So the social audit is then done, and it's within the process of undertaking the social audit, we also have the validation. And this is done in such a manner that when collecting the data or the information from that particular project, engaging the auditee, we ensure that the information you are collecting is factual, which means that you really have to engage the real officers who are actually handling these particular projects. And as you engage the citizens also, you are able to pick feedback from them on whether this project is, for instance, benefiting them. And this is very, very important. As I said earlier, it helps us actually track whether, for instance, we are moving towards the realization of the SDG, because what we are actually doing is like localizing the SDGs by engaging the citizen in this particular process. So once the report has been developed, then we have to share it with the relevant stakeholders, including the auditing institution. It has to be shared with the oversight institutions, which for instance includes the parliament and even the county assemblies. And very, very important is the issue of follow-up. And follow-up can be done by the citizens. It can be done by the civil society organization working together with the citizens, and it can also be done by the Office of the Auditor General. What you are really emphasizing is the role of the citizen in actually playing that oversight and follow-up out of the findings that are coming out of this social audit. So if you look at the process, it actually mirrors and follows the audit process by the Office of the Auditor General. Yes.
All right.
Yes. So what it does by the end of the day is the civil society organizations working together with citizens have been undertaking social audits. But most of this is ad hoc. It's not structured. But what the Office of the Auditor General has done is actually to have this much more structured, so that the reports out of the social audits that have been, the reports developed out of the social audits can actually be shared by Parliament for discussions.
Okay.
Because it's always a concern that the office produces these reports, but rarely are they discussed, even with some of the stakeholders that are actually mandated by law to discuss this. So the citizen have also to play their critical role in doing this.
So the process doesn't just end there where the report is put out, but actually discussing it and seeing what more needs to be done.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the citizen, let me come to you, Kimeu. What more does the citizen need to do to make sure that this process is as effective and as efficient and as beneficial as it was envisioned to be in the first place, in as much as it's happening for the first time on a national scale?
Well, I think
and all the relevant stakeholders.
The first point is really for the citizen to understand their position in all this. They are at the center of it. And secondly is to seek information, accurate information that then enables them to check what is being done against the information that is being provided, and then providing that for compilation. So the citizen needs to be someone who is engaged, not someone who sits back and waits. It has to be someone who sees something going wrong in a small project in the village and wants to do something.
And not just saying to mwingine ataona.
Yes, and the intention here too is to really support and amplify the voice of that citizen through a structured process. I think secondly is in the follow-up of what happens. I mean, in the setup that we have today, in the formal audit system, once the Auditor General has produced his report, he has discharged his constitutional mandate.
Duties,
The follow-up, as Chrispin says, has been a challenge. The responsibility has been placed on Parliament to discuss the reports and see how they are implemented. Unfortunately, that has not been done properly. And I think Parliament needs to up its game, but citizens can actually force Parliament and the county assemblies to take their oversight roles more importantly, and to play them more significantly. But that citizen has to be an engaged citizen. Yeah.
All right. Now, when we're just talking about, citizen engagement being part of this process. Now, let's just get to when, where, and how they can be part of this engagement that will be happening in about a day and a half to go.
That's important. Allow me also to say that one of the basic principles underlying this citizen engagement framework is patriotism.
Yes.
Article 10 of the Constitution is very clear on the national values and principles. And that is at the center of this framework to ensure that citizens come out for the good of their own country. That will then provide the imperative for them to commit to support the review of what happens around them.
Yes.
As opposed to seeing what's happening, but not having a second thought about this process. The other important principle that is also supporting, underlying this process is voluntarism. It is true that every one of us is engaged in certain things, but when it comes to review and audit of public resources, we have to volunteer to work on this process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will not achieve as much as envisaged. This process is going to help this country to achieve more with less resources, but achieve more value. And therefore, this process is actually is ongoing. Even as we speak now, as you ask when and how citizens are going to be involved, citizens are already involved doing this work independently, disjointedly. We are saying, can we synergize in a structured, formal way going forward so that the impact of the efforts that we are putting in can give us more value? And therefore, this is the process we are seeing. So the launch is really a culmination of saying we are now have a structure where we are going to synergize all the entities who are doing different things.
Yeah.
We have CSOs doing education, we have others doing water, we have others doing environment, but we are saying we can put all our efforts together, do all these reports, put them in one report that then it is taken to the county assembly, is taken to the national assembly, and is discussed.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking 20 reports to one committee, the work becomes laborious. But when you give them one report covering all these other sectors and covering them with the help of citizens at the center of the process, provides very useful, tangible information. The process will be efficient, but also it will be impactful. This is what this process is going to help us achieve.
All right, and as we bring the conversation to a close, maybe let me even just start with you, your word of encouragement to the public out there in regards to, embracing and accepting and not just seeing the flaws in this engagement, saying it's a bit too late, because, as humans, the first thing we want to do is complain. We're not getting this, we're not doing that, we need this, we need that, but we don't look at what our own shortcomings when it comes to what the citizen ought to do and maybe how they can be part of this process and just try and see the good as opposed to the bad of this whole engagement.
My opinion is that this process has come at the right time. Why I say so, we now have the Information Act that provides ways where citizens can access information held by state entities. The Office of the Auditor General is one of them. And so having this process already where it is today allows citizens to immediately loop in this process and start benefiting immediately.
Yeah.
Because we already have a structure, we also have a framework. So we can actually start working immediately moving forward.
Just get
the
ball
audit reports are already out there.
Yeah.
We can pick them up, sit down, analyze them, and ask questions straight away. And there's a structure on how this can be done. So it's true that at this moment of time, it is the right time for us to start getting involved in this process. Actually, we say, wakati ni sasa. Time is now to be able to take our role more in this process of public resource use and management.
Okay.
As citizens.
Okay.
And as also state offices, as a state office also, we are also saying time is now to ensure that we also bring on board the citizens who have a lot of information that we are not able to see because we have limitation in terms of staff, we have limitation in terms of time, we have limitation in terms of actual facilitation resources, and therefore to ensure that we achieve more and reach to the expectations of the citizens, their involvement, their engagement is a critical point at this time when our resources and our accountability needs to be enhanced.
Okay.
And therefore, their contribution is something that I will give a thumbs up starting today.
All right.
They can ask questions to our officers out in the field there. They can talk to them. They can write an email. They can take their phone and call us, and we'll be able to start discussing this matter and ensuring that the benefits accrue to the people of Kenya.
All right. Let me come to you, Kimeu. Your parting shot and, of course, your word of encouragement to the greater public in regards to embracing this engagement framework.
Well, I think for me is to say that, you know, the citizen has this role to play, and our constitutional framework and legal framework has provided all these opportunities to engage at different levels. You may not be able to engage at the county level or sub-county level, but you certainly can engage in the village level, in the sub-location level. You know, projects that are within your vicinity and that will not cost much in terms of time for you to be able to look at them. Seek the information around that, and you will see how our collective effort can transform this country.
All right. Chrispin, your parting shot to the public.
What we're realizing is that we can no longer use the budget as an indicator of the quality and quantity of services that we receive. And this is actually informed by the issues that we see keep on recurring as reported by the audit reports by the Office of the Auditor General. So what this tells us is that as citizens, we really need to begin engaging in exacting accountability from the leaders that we actually put into office to deliver for us. The Constitution provides us with the opportunity through the various provisions, for instance, participating in the budget process, and especially participating in oversight at the local level in service delivery and even management of resources. So we need to take up that role as citizens. Let's remember that government is about us, and those in leadership are actually supposed to be delivering for us. And at times they are not able to deliver effectively because we are not providing them with some of the information that will actually help them deliver on that particular mandate.
All right.
But we need to actually ensure that there's accountability in the management of our resources and delivery of services.
All right.
Yes.
All right. And you know, they once said that, you know, as a citizen, once you understand the power that you have, you will be able to demand what, you know, is rightfully yours from the government, and can only start with such engagements and such frameworks that are being put in place to try and bring you closer to even the government as a whole. Well, we do hope you are better positioned to understand what we mean when we talk about the whole audit process, and now you can be part of this processes. Remember, this citizen accountability audit engagement framework will be happening this Friday. More details is subject to be put out for the greater public. Yes?
Yeah.
All right. More information is going to be put out to just help you know where it's going to be happening and how you can be part of the process. The process has started, so you can just be sure to find the local authorities, the local offices. You can be able to get information.
At the moment, we are launching this citizen engagement framework this Friday at the Hotel Intercontinental. And after that, then the documentation will be shared with our regional offices, where then citizens can be able to access it. And also civil society organizations, a number of them will be represented, and they'll be able to have this information across the country.
All right, so after this launch, you'll be able to get all the necessary information that you need moving forward on how to be part of this engagement. Well, I have been speaking with three fantastic gentlemen with me in studio. I'll start to the extreme left. He is Chrispin Oduor, who is a consultant working with the World Bank on citizen engagement. Thank you so much for being with us. At the center, we have Samuel Kimeu, who is the Executive Director at Transparency International. Thank you for being with us. And to my immediate left, we have David Gichana, who is the Deputy Auditor General. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, Good Morning Kenya does continue. We have another fantastic discussion coming up in not too long. You want to keep it here. We want to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with Good Morning Kenya. Keep talking to us. The SMS line is up on the left or on the top left of your screen. 20154 is the number at KBC Channel 1. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya. My handle is Jane Wamboi, and my colleagues at Ramaguko, at Remanyara, and at Dorina Range. See you after the break.